The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to the Lowdown Podcast, your home for the untold stories of sports, presented by Lojo Media. We're here live in Los Angeles, and as you know, you can follow the podcast at the Lowdown Podcast on all social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can follow us on YouTube. If you've missed any parts of the show, you can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/Lojo Media. So before I introduce my amazing guest today, very excited, we have Women in Sports Roundtable, Part 1. I would like to announce that the new and improved LojoMedia.com will be live this Saturday, April 7th. You can check out all the new content that I have, sports interviews, stories. It is your home for the untold stories of sports. So LojoMedia.com will be live this weekend. You guys should check it out, subscribe. And also, I celebrated my birthday this past Monday, so it will be a joint celebration. This Saturday, I'm having a launch party to celebrate both LojoMedia.com's new unveiling and also my birthday. Without further ado, I want to introduce my first guest. She's known as your favorite NBA player's favorite photographer. She is one of the most amazing photographers in the sports business, self-made. And, last week, I believe, or maybe a couple weeks ago, she was on ESPN's The Jump. She's been seen all over with your favorite NBA players. Everybody from Steph Curry, LeBron James, Dwayne Wade. The list goes on. Kevin Durant, James Harden. They're all calling her for exclusive videos and, of course, photos. If you haven't had a Cassie Athena watermark, you haven't made it, pretty much. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Miss Cassie Athena. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course. And I'm actually live on Instagram right now, too. So, our second guest is none other than Stephanie Mejia. She's normally behind the scenes of every basketball sporting event that you probably have ever seen. And she's normally seen and not heard. She stands at all of 5 feet, and I'm giving that to her generously. But she makes all those basketball tournaments and events happen. She's marketing, branding, and player relations all wrapped up into one. Welcome to the show, Stephanie.
Thank you.
And also my fellow Trojan, of course, so fight on.
Fight on.
Unfortunately, Denise White couldn't be with us today as a CEO, obviously. There's always something that comes up, and she had a client to tend to. But I'm so excited to have these ladies on the panel with me, and I'm going to start with this. How would you describe what you do? And I'll start with Cassie.
I feel like people say that I'm a photographer, but that's just kind of like my, very small thing of what I can do. It's like everything. You have to be good at networking with people. You have to be good at building relationships, being friendly with people, working hard, doing a little bit of everything. So I would say I'm a little bit of all of that. Plus, I know how to take pictures and videos. So photographer / entrepreneur. I don't know. All of the above.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what about you, Stephanie? I know it's probably a little bit harder to kind of describe what you do, but if you could give us a little scenario, like what do you...
I'm looking right here, right?
Yeah, go
ahead. Brand marketing. So I work at Jordan Brand.
Mm-hmm.
So that encompasses everything that connects the consumer with our brand, specifically our product. Mm-hmm. So I work with everything west of Texas for the brand.
That's a huge region.
It's fun.
Yes. That's awesome. So if we could take a snapshot into a week in the life of one of you guys, what would that snapshot look like?
I feel like every day is different, and you know, and Stephanie and I work a lot together too. So, you know, I might be sitting at home one day editing, and then she calls me and says, "You come to this tournament tomorrow," and I just go. So, you know, it's kind of hard to say, but for the most part, for me, there's a lot of, you know, going to basketball games because that's my world and I want to network. So whether I'm there to network or there to work, I'm going to go no matter what because I feel like it's, you know, either if I'm working or I'm just networking, it's just all kind of in one. And then sit at home editing a lot. You know, a lot of people think I just hang around NBA stars all day, but there's a lot of sitting at home with my cat editing, you know, so it's a little bit mixture of, you know, the star life and a lot of hard work behind the scenes.
And what about you, Steph? What does a snapshot of your kind of week look like?
Well, same to her point. Like, I think there was an event on 125 where, I'm still confused by that too, but where I legit probably text you with 2 hours. My mind was going a lot. I didn't even give you much context. I just said, come.
Yeah.
I remember you were like, oh,
I just brought a camera. Yeah. I didn't know.
So it varies every day. Like, each day is different, which is probably the beauty of it.
Absolutely.
No day is the same. So, yeah.
I can definitely say the same, especially since I've, like, segued into this, like, entrepreneur freelance lifestyle. It's like every day it really just changes. So can you guys kind of tell me where you got your start in sports and, like, where your love of basketball came from?
For me, I mean, I played a little bit of volleyball and basketball when I was in high school and college, and I just always would have fun taking pictures. So for me, it was more of a hobby. I just enjoyed shooting and getting to know it. And then for me, like, my big turning point was during the 2011 lockout, and a lot of people know I started off like mainly shooting the Drew League, and you know, I was the first person to shoot down there, and that kind of branched into just networking with other players and realizing players are brands as well. They're not just athletes. So I kind of got into just helping build people's brands, and that's sort of how I jumped into it. It kind of just, it was a hobby and it turned into a career. Yeah.
What about you? My question is kind of just where you got your start in sports and where your love of the game came from.
Probably, well, the love of the game came from my brother. So I have an older brother. He's 8 years older than me. So I still remember my first NBA game. It was a Clipper game, so that's why I'm a Darius Miles fan. And I always wanted to be in sports, but like at USC, I studied science. So I thought I wanted to be in sports medicine. And there was an internship in 2008 that took me to Beijing that completely just, I could never pinpoint to this day what it was, but that experience kind of altered what I wanted to do. So I still knew I wanted to be within sports, but what I had to figure that out. And it was like my senior year.
Yeah, definitely. I feel you, because when I was in college at USC, similarly, I was majoring in broadcast and I was minoring in sports media, but I really didn't know if I wanted to go more into like the sports business side of things, like the agency, or if I wanted to go more into like journalism. And I always flirted with the idea of journalism, but it wasn't until I got to the Drew League in like 2012 that I was like, maybe I could, pursue this, and why not do it while you're young, and maybe circle back to the whole sports management. And that's why I really wanted to have Denise on here to kind of speak to that. She transitioned from, broadcasting to, the more sports management side of things. But it's sports is such a broad thing, and kind of like what you talked about before, Cassie, is that, we kind of have to do a little bit of everything. So even though I'm a reporter, I'm still also a videographer when I have to be, or an editor when I have to be, or a photographer even if I have to be, social media expert, and there's all these like ideas about. But you brought up an interesting point that I wanted to kind of elaborate on, and that's, that athletes are brands. And we're seeing a lot more branded content, for athletes. And I kind of wanted to speak to you, Stephanie, a little bit more about, where you think the direction of, the athlete as the brand is going in terms of, like, sports marketing.
I think there's, younger players, more younger, are starting to realize that they're a brand. Like, they're a walking brand at the end of the day, just as much as, like, Cassie as you are. Like, and I think they're starting to understand that. So, good point is, like, they want Cassie's images. Why? Because of the quality. They want to start branding what they're playing. And I was at this tournament, this camp. And it starts at a young age. Like, at high school, they're so eager to start branding themselves. And I think when it gets to the pros, like, more athletes are, instead of waiting for that second or third check, which is usually when they start to grasp it, they're starting to grasp it younger. And they're understanding, like, what they do off the court can definitely, you know, there's a payback with it.
Absolutely.
And so they're learning to even how to carry themselves at all times in a high level.
It's so crazy because I had a couple of high school basketball players last episode. It was like Josh and Caleb Christopher, who they love you and praise and adore you. And I'm sure they've played in a couple Jordan tournaments before. And they, you know, had this whole social media following. Like, you know, I'm like, how do you have this many followers? You're 16, you know? But it's crazy that that's the trend of sports and that they have so much responsibility at such a young age. Right. Similarly, we as women in sports have that same kind of level of responsibility in how we carry ourselves. Right. I kind of want to segue into that. You know, have you guys experienced any double standards with, you know, how you approach, you know, players or, you know, just how you develop those relationships when you're first starting out?
I mean, totally. I feel like in any field, there's going to be a lot of double standard stuff. But in sports, I mean, I've noticed just as being a female photographer, there's really not many of them. So a lot of people just aren't used to it. And I think there's just been in the past, like, a lot of negative stereotypes about certain females that hang around athletes. And now things have been turning and people have more of a respect for just seeing that women are just as hardworking and smart, and not everybody's out here with an ulterior motive. Like, people just want to help build your brand. So it's definitely a lot of, you know, being careful as yourself as a brand, and you just approach people the right way. You make friends with their whole team, not just them. And but I definitely see a lot of guy photographers who get a little more access than I do to certain things, and that's okay, because now that was at first. Now I've kind of built my reputation up where I get more access than, you know, anybody, but it definitely took years to do it. It's not something overnight. But the other great thing is now there's so many more other women in sports who are building each other up. I remember I met Stephanie like years ago, and there's a lot of, you know, I met you, and there's a lot of other women that specifically are more around like Southern California that all just kind of stick together, but are all very influential and powerful and helping, you know, players from high school age to college, NBA. So it's kind of nice to have like a group of other women to lean on and understand what you go through. But for the most part, I wouldn't complain about being a female. I think it's cool. You kind of stand out, too. So there's a lot of advantages to it as well. So
definitely. I think you have to just figure out how to use it for your power, you know, and femininity is his
like
power.
She said everything I probably would.
I mean,
I think a key thing is, obviously, there is the stereotype, the double standard. Obviously, like, to her point, it takes time to be able to get the access that someone may get. It took, you know, but I do think, like, if you focus on the positives and focus on the fact of, to her point, as a woman, you do stand out, like, what the return you get is going to be better, because if you focus on the positive energy, you're going to get that same energy back within due time.
You know, I'm not personally dating right now, but I have to ask you guys about this whole, because, you know, as women in sports, we often get, like you said, like this, like, I know athletes are hitting on you, and I'm like, well, of course, no, just kidding. But no, I'm totally kidding. But, you know, this whole idea of, like, where do you date? You know, who do you date? And, like, you know, you're around millionaires most of the time, and then it's like, you know, regular Joe Schmo, like, how is he going to approach you? But, like, how do you guys approach dating? Has that been a struggle for you as, you know, a successful woman in sports? And, like, you know, do you want a family? Like, is that something that you're, you know, looking forward to? Or, you know, like, where does dating fit into just like the success?
I'm probably the most private person I've been I personally don't date within my workspace. So anything basketball related, I've actually steered clear from. But that's a personal choice. Like, there's definitely many women who, you know, it's wherever you find that person for you,
right?
Whatever works for you. Me personally, I've actually steered clear from that. But I think there is a balance you can find.
Definitely. And do you want a family one day? Is that something that you're...
Maybe in like a few years.
Maybe a few years. Okay. We'll have you back on this same podcast, and we'll run back the tape. Like, ask her in a few years. Yeah. What about you, Cassie?
I feel like it's a very interesting question, but I mean, the good thing is, like, there's so many women just around. Like, they're not really worried if we want to date them or not. So there's not really pressure from, like, athletes trying to talk to us. So And I feel like when you reach a certain level of respect, people aren't really looking to talk to you in that way anyway. They'd rather build their brand with us than anything. So as far as dating, like, I try not to date in that world too, but as far as dating just like a quote unquote like regular person, sometimes they're intimidated by the fact that I do hang around a bunch of famous NBA millionaires. So it's kind of like frustrating either way, but it's not something I'm like focused on. My family's from Eastern Europe, so like at 19 you got to start like getting married. So I'm like a little bit on the older side. So my mom's like, you know, when you're getting married. So I have a lot of pressure from like my family back home, but it's all love, and they know I'm trying to build my brand and do something that's never been done. So that just all comes like whenever God is ready for me to do what I need to do, then I'll be ready. So.
Yeah, I had to chuck it up to that too, because I'm like, it's just not working right now. It's just too much.
It comes
like,
all at the right time.
Yeah, I think so too. So speaking of, you know, how do you set those kind of boundaries, or do you like how do those relationships come? Like, in terms of just friendships with guys, you know, because I know you guys are always seen courtside with so-and-so and such and such. Like, how do these relationships come about, you know? And
I think it's organic. Like, she can probably speak to it as well. Like, you're yourself. I don't think, I mean, me personally, yes, they're basketball players. I don't see them as such. I see them as people.
Right.
So I don't really focus on, oh my gosh, it's, I don't know, whomever.
Right.
Like, it's just not my concern. So I'm just myself. And I think that's usually how that develops. And then it's part of, like, being a woman, like, around them. I think probably when I was younger, I feel like I was more like a big sister. Now that I'm a little older, I feel like I'm, like, I don't know, like a... Like I had
big sister,
please. I played somebody's mom the other day, and I was not his mom for Josh. So I was his mom for one day. I was just like, you could actually pass for my kid now. Right. But I think it's just that organic, natural relationship. You just treat them as such, like they're people just like anyone. Yeah, and have their highs and their lows.
And what would be your advice for young women aspiring to be in the sports industry?
I would say you have to get into it for the right reasons. Like, you have to really want to be here to make it a better industry, to make the people better. If you're trying, I've seen people leave comments like, oh, I'm going to go be a photographer so I can find a boyfriend. Like, that's, first of all, nobody wants to get your pictures because you want to date them. Like, you have to be talented and respected, and same with marketing and all that stuff. Like, they're around so many different people. They can tell if you're being genuine or not. And I think that's, especially like Stephanie and I, that's why we build so many friendships with players, is because, like she said, like, we just treat them as who they are. They're just normal people. And of course, sometimes you take a step back and you're like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, I'm, hanging around this person. But at the end of the day, you want to build that relationship. You don't want to try to take selfies and be starstruck and all that. You just treat them as a normal person, right. And then they respect that. And yeah, I would just say, like, to just follow what you're passionate about and don't have ulterior motives, because in any industry.
Yeah. I mean, people think that working in sports is all glamorous, but you both have, endured some very trying and adverse times. You're a brain tumor survivor. Your mom suffers from lupus, and these are all things that you guys have been very, vocal about in terms of getting involved in those, communities. So how would you say that those life's challenges have shaped you?
They make you. More than anything, like whether it's something like that's really tough, dealing with that, or with my mom's health, they just make you. I don't think it's something you should worry about or stress on or weigh on. It's gonna make you better, and it's gonna develop that. In all honesty, sports is, especially for women, you gotta have tough skin. Yes, there's no room for not that. And I think situations that are trying, they make you better. They teach you how to react.
Yes.
So,
what about for you, Cassie?
Yeah, I mean, being successful in anything you do is never a straight path. Like, that's what makes you better, is learning how to deal with adversity and all that. And I don't remember, like, the original question, but...
Well, just, like, how have life's challenges made you,
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, like, life is all about, like, problem solving. And so... Now, sometimes I used to get really frustrated when I deal with adversity or haters or whatever. And now I've just learned to sort of embrace it, because it means that, if people are really trying to go against you or trying to stop you, maybe you're doing something right, because you're doing something different, something that's never been done. And, even like just in general, like I was talking to someone the other day, it's like people who break the rules, that's how you get somewhere different, and so you do something different. And, I just feel like you have to just love what you do and know that good and bad kind of weigh each other out, and you just can't focus on the bad when it's happening. You have to focus on tomorrow and the good, and just know that it's all you're where you're meant to be. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of this quote that, well-behaved women seldom make history. I mean, that is true.
That's true.
It's really true. So I want to lighten it up and ask you, what's the best sporting event or experience that you've had? Because, I mean, you're filming Steph Curry's, 30th birthdays, and you're going to Jordan parties. And so, like, what's the best, sporting event or experience that you guys have both had?
Worked on or just been at?
Either way.
Olympics.
Which Olympics did you go to?
I went to a few.
Okay.
Always. And I think if you can go.
What was it about that experience that just sticks out to you?
You could go to like a basketball game, a football game, and it's like obviously passionate people, and they're going for whichever team. When it comes to Olympics, it's like heart, it's culture, it's such a beautiful thing. Like you see people from all walks of life, all different countries in one place for one moment. Like where it's just pretty dope. Everyone should experience.
Sounds like really powerful. I'm like goals.
You should
get to an Olympics.
Pretty dope.
Yep.
What about for you?
For me, I don't know. It'd be difficult. I feel like everything that I shoot and I'm a part of is special in its own way. Like I haven't shot in Olympics yet, so maybe that would be my next goal.
Hoping it comes here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I've done like a lot of Team USA's, like when they've practiced in America. Like that was pretty cool, just seeing so many superstars. I got to go to Serbia for one of my cousin's weddings, and Quincy Miller was playing on a big team out there called Red Star, and he took me to my first EuroLeague game.
I watched that video.
Yeah.
It was insane.
Wild. I've never seen fans throwing stuff and smoking in arenas and singing songs and waving flags. So definitely just seeing international basketball was pretty cool, but of course, all the like All-Star Weekend, LA, New Orleans, New York, like that stuff is amazing. So,
well, if we can get any sponsors that are watching to send us all international to go to some of those games, I would love that.
Of course.
Okay, well, that's also a very good segue because I feel like there's a lot of this new international, like a lot of guys are going to play overseas and such. And so, how does that fit into kind of what you guys do at Jordan, if at all?
It doesn't. I mean, we tend to have an international game at JBC in order to get a pulse of the younger kids that are overseas because there is a lot of talent over the water, but it doesn't actually technically play a part, not for the high school kids specifically. Okay, but or college kids.
Do you guys think that, I think it was LeVar Ball who brought it up, and he's like a polarizing figure in sports. But this whole idea of more players going towards, just straight pro. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Because that was at one time a thing, the LeBron James of the world, the Kobe Bryants, like that was a thing. So what are your thoughts on?
There's a kid from Syracuse, or he's committed to Syracuse, who just decommitted because he's going to go to the G League.
Right.
The NBA is definitely trying to help kids stay home as opposed to feeling the need to go overseas to not do the college and then just prepare over there.
Right.
I think it depends on each person. It's like whatever works for you. There's been kids who have gone and their families have been able to support them through that process and be there with them so they're not homesick per se. And it's worked out great for them. Ferguson's like a perfect example of that. Like I can't say too many people supported that.
Right.
But he did it. His mom was there every step of the way, and he plays for OKC now and is doing well. So it's definitely, and Moutier, same boat.
Brandon Jennings.
Yeah, it's definitely something that could work, but I think it's dependent on if it works for that specific kid in that family. Just as much as I'm sure this kid the kid from, I believe it's Darius, wanted to stay home to play at the G League and work his way up that way.
Right. I think I hope that they restructure the G League's contract so that it's more, fiscally rather viable medium for players. But I definitely think that it's designed to be that, the feeder system to the NBA. And I feel like guys, if you want to get that college experience, 1 year might do it for you and you get the opportunity to go pro. But I feel like most times in that 1 year, half the year, you're traveling, because of the season. So it's not really getting that experience. I feel like there should be some kind of structure where they can commit to a place, play in their careers, and then come back and get their education. That's what I would propose to the NBA if you're listening. You know? But, you know, we only have time for a little bit more, and unfortunately, I mean, this has been amazing. I love you guys so much. I'm so happy that you were able to make it. I know that there were some struggles getting here, but I'm going to go into this week's Shot Caller of the Week. And as we get up that graphic, obviously, this young lady killed it. Buzzer beaters for both of the championship games. You know, Notre Dame knocking off this powerhouse in UConn. Arike, I'm going to butcher her last name, so I'm just going to go with that. But she's our shot caller of this week. And, you know, shout out to her for killing it and representing for women's basketball. That was just 2 amazing games. I don't know if you guys caught those games, but it was like...
It was fire.
Really? I mean...
Like, it was like, yo.
Right.
Like,
they were talking really about it on NBA Countdown as an NBA game was going on. Like, Beetle kept throwing it to, like, if you're not watching on ESPN2, because we are in studio, like, you know.
UConn hadn't lost in some time.
They were the dynasty. They were the Kentucky, if you will. So it was...
I think they're way past a Kentucky.
Yeah, seriously.
It was that. That was wow.
Yeah, so I'm dethroning, you know, UConn, and then her having those amazing games. Like, shout out to you, girl. You'll be on that. Yeah. And then this week's hashtag facts, we're bringing it back, is Miss Jane Kennedy. In 1978, Jane Kennedy became one of the first women to enter the sportscasting arena. She joined the cast of NFL Today as a studio analyst and really changed the trajectory of women as sportscasters. So she's gorgeous. I went to school with some of her kids at USC, and shout out to her. We're going to have her on the podcast, hopefully for the Women in Sports Roundtable Part 2. So stay tuned for that, guys. That will do it for today's show. I'm your host again, Lauren A. Jones. You can follow me at Lojo Media on all social platforms. And also check out lojomedia.com, the new unveiling this Saturday. It will be released, and you guys will get to see all the new content that I've been working on. Thank you so much to my special guests today who joined me in studio, Miss Stephanie Mejia and Cassie Athena. These are amazing ladies. Follow them on social media at Cassie Athena Photo and at _SMEJIA underscore, because that's the easiest way to get it out there. I won't be here for the next 2 weeks. I'll be traveling to the East Coast, DC, and New York, but catch us in 3 weeks. We'll be back, and until then, stay tuned. Thank you guys for watching.